Test, test.
It's ready? It's ready.
Okay. We'll call to order the City Council work session for Monday, October 28th, 2024. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call now.
Bonnie Shinolis. Here. Scott Steckmesser.
Here.
Adam Husky.
He is running late tonight. Got an email from him this afternoon, so he's running late tonight.
Darla LeClaire. Here. Mark Bittner.
Here.
Shannon Derby. Here. Bill LeClaire.
Here.
Doug Brandt.
Here.
Tim Petrie.
Here. Okay, on to number 4, action items. Under A, we have TID. Number 12, development agreement with Milkweed Ventures LLC to provide a pay-as-you-go developer grant to assist with development of the Violet Inn Spa and Lounge, 1415 16th Street. This was tabled from our October 21st City Council meeting.
This, as Council President mentioned, this matter was tabled until tonight. The Violet Inn project is at 1415 16th Street, which some of you know as the old Elks Club, or more recently Club 920, or the Fireside Lounge, I think it was for a time. This property is within Tax Incremental District number 12, which was originally created to assist the Cobblestone Hotel development. Amendment number 2 to the project plan, which was approved by Council last May, added some territory to that TIF. It also added some work activities in the project plan, including a developer grant to assist with the expansion of Sobeys Auto Service, which was approved a few weeks back, and also development assistance to the Violet Inn project by Milkweed Ventures, as was mentioned. Melissa Nyson is here. She and her sister are investors in this ambitious project, taking on what really had become a blighted building in the heart of our downtown, with a real vision and a very aggressive investment plan to turn this into something amazing. We describe it as a pay-as-you-go grant, and for folks that are listening or in the audience, that basically means that the city's not borrowing money or incurring any debt up front. However, the city does create an obligation through this agreement to pay to the developer monies that result from the taxable value added by this project, taxes that are generated from this property from now to 2046, making those payments until such time as they either equal $135,000, there's no interest factor applied, by the way, or we hit the end of the TIF district in 2046. Projections are the developer would be paid off before that, but if by some chance that didn't happen, the city has no obligation beyond the end of the TIF. So with that as background, this is entirely consistent with plans for downtown redevelopment, consistent with the city's, I think, conservative but creative use of TIF to assist with downtown projects. I would mention this project has also been approved for a $200,000 loan through the city's Business Industrial Development Committee, and we will be addressing in the 2025 budget facade grant funding for the exterior of the building. Total investment, as identified in the development agreement, estimated at easily $1.5 million. That doesn't include the property acquisition that has already happened, nor the cost of some of the furnishings and outfitting for the project and architectural fees. So Melissa can give you some more narrative on that. Easily a $2 million total investment in the downtown. The document has attached to it legal description of the property as Exhibit A, a project budget, pretty extensive. The quotes from the contractor. Thank you. Hammond Construction as your Exhibit B. Also a copy of the memorandum of agreement, which should be filed with the Register of Deeds to make this a matter of record. Melissa has indicated she can make the property available for a walkthrough, which we can do, but there's also a video walkthrough, which we'll share this evening. So Melissa, over to you, but feel free to offer any comments you wish to share.
Sure, yeah, I would be happy to show anyone the existing building, in the this week or next week, as they will be starting demolition on November 11th. So anytime before that, I'd be happy to show anyone. Or you could watch the video, smells better.
Is the one you prefer or both of those?
We don't have to show, I mean, they're a little long,
Okay.
but if you want to look at it.
I just took a few photos at the upper floor. We are able to save all those wood floors,
which is nice. And the ceiling, so all that will be saved.
So they're both upper level bar and lower level bar areas.
Well, the upstairs won't have a bar.
Right, when it's done.
Yeah, it's a split level, so when you walk in, you either go up in or down into the public area.
Kitchen's not currently ready for prime time.
Just a few coat of paint, it'll be.
And this had gone through bank foreclosure. It was purchased from the bank. Current view of the exterior. And then
This is just a rough Photoshop.
a wee bit of a change. Just good. I don't know if you want to speak to the floor plan at all. Folks can see that. Feel free if you want to use the pointer.
Sure, you'll just walk in the front area. Up here, and then this is the lobby. It's gonna be, have a lot of plants. We want to get people here in the winter, so it's gonna have hammocks and kind of a hangout. These are the 6 rooms, so these two are 200 square feet, these are 250. This is the ADA room. This is the ADA lift and access. We have to redo the sidewalks here, so they can enter that way. And if you go down to the lower level, we're keeping the same shape of it. Storage here, warming kitchen. Just mechanical Zoom room, so guests can do Zoom calls. There's the lift, more bathrooms, a couple of saunas, and then a massage room, and we're also gonna have mechanical massage and a yoga studio, and then the emergency exit. And this will also have a porch that leads to a green space, which is now asphalt.
I think it's fair to say, I know Melissa's had some productive discussions with the folks at Cobblestone regarding
Yes.
some cooperative parking arrangements, because especially at winter parking, ban time, parking can be an issue otherwise.
Yeah, they've been really great, and they're supportive, helping us, access if we need it, which has been really nice.
Could be some nice synergies with both the hotel next door and the Sepia Chapel down the street.
So ours is gonna be adult only, so I think it's different demographics that each hotel is gonna have. So there's family business, ours is more friends and couples.
So with that, we'd present the development agreement tonight for council consideration. No changes since both table last week.
Okay, so yeah, we're looking for that motion to authorize the city manager and the city clerk to sign the agreement on behalf of the city.
I'll make the motion to authorize city manager clerk to sign the agreement.
Thank you, Mark. Was that a second by Shannon? Yep. Okay, council discussion. Any discussion, questions?
Mr. President, I have a point. You have 6 rooms. In the bar, will the bar be open to the public on a regular basis then, or that?
The whole lower level will be open to the public.
And do you have any, your restaurant, where's that gonna be located? The food?
There's no restaurant.
Restaurant at all.
Yeah, we want to collaborate with local food trucks and
Okay.
restaurants to bring in food or catering with that warming kitchen. We'll have snacks,
Snacks are sometimes just good too.
salty snacks.
So are you gonna run the kitchen at all, or what's your plans for the kitchen?
It's just gonna be a catering kitchen.
Okay. So you're not gonna, I see that there was a hood in there and everything, is that hood good yet, or,
No, nothing is up to code.
so it cost you quite a bit of money?
Yeah, we don't want to do the food part. We'd rather collaborate.
Yeah, that'd be nice for the city bringing food trucks in, and Waverly's right across the street in the corner there, and There's plenty of places around. so
Especially in the winter, we
Yeah.
thought it would be great, maybe even have a supper club or something during the winter where they're slow and they can come in and bring their food and
Yeah, I like that idea.
we could have fun themed dinners.
And we have a new wood fire pizza place opening. I see that's public as of this weekend with two young foodies running it that have shown an interest in doing some catering in the community as well, so.
I just met Justin.
Yep, they were in to sign their loan paperwork today, so things are moving forward there for a spring opening. Very interested in the catering business as well.
And your spa services, will that be a membership then, or just pay as you?
Hey, as you go. Yeah, like if you stay at the end, you get a free sauna.
Okay.
You know, they might get a discount session and other things, but it is all open to the public. In the yoga studio, we can, it's very convertible, so we can make it a art class, or we can have different types of things in there.
Okay, anything else? Okay, seeing nothing else, this will be a roll call vote. Val?
Scott Stegwasser,
Aye.
Adam Husky, Darla Leclerc. Aye. Mark Bittner,
Aye.
Shannon Derby. Aye. Bill Leclerc,
Aye.
Doug Grant,
Aye.
Tim Petrie,
Aye.
Bonnie Shimalonis. Aye. All in favor?
Awesome.
Very good. Melissa, thank you for being here.
Thank
Yes.
you, and thank you for all your support, and we are so excited about this project, and we just love everyone here.
Yeah, we love you too, and I think a lot of people are gonna like what you're offering, so thank you. On to number 5, discussion items. Discussion of topics pertaining to short-term rental properties or vacation rentals. We have a bunch of stuff. I'll just kind of go through and then we'll just kind of talk about through them. Number 1, we have current city ordinances related to STRs, overview by city attorney. Wisconsin laws related to STRs and the ability of local municipalities to regulate such properties, including examples from other Wisconsin communities. Overview by city attorney. What we know about STRs in the city of Two Rivers, with the number of registered ones, impacting local tourism, policing issues, and feedback from local residents. And finally, on number 4, we have city council views on whether amendments to existing ordinances and possible additional regulations are needed at the time. So,
Well, Andrew Adams, one of our city attorneys from Weston Dunn, is here tonight for this discussion specifically, although I want him to stick around for the closed session, so we still have the energy to go into that as well. And we thought it would be helpful to start with an overview of state law and the status of the current city ordinance. And you do have materials that were in your package. Does anybody need a paper copy? If it was distributed with the agenda, I do have a few. If you can make use of it. Just holler if you need.
I did put together a PowerPoint, and I'm realizing I have no idea how to connect it to here.
If you want to email it, can you email it to me, or I can get you a USB drive in?
Probably just as good to just talk through it
Okay.
quickly, I think.
All right.
So, current city ordinances we've got, in particular, specific tourist rooming house ordinance is in chapter 6, section 13. It requires an application, a criminal background check. There is a relatively small fee compared to other communities, $150 per year. And that covers 3 initial contacts or people that you need to provide contact information for. And beyond that, an applicant would need to provide $25 more per contact. Again, these fees are very low compared to a lot of other places. Property managers must be accessible, but an owner or renter is not required to have a property manager. For an application, you're required to have a current health department inspection. You must provide a guest registry list for guests for the past 2 years. You cannot have a fireplace without a current certificate. And you've got some questions as to how this ties into the zoning code. Manitowoc, sorry. city powers here come generally from their zoning power. So the power to regulate short-term rentals, you've got a lot more power in your zoning to do that. And so the fact that right now, the zoning that Two Rivers is relying on is in its R1 single-family zoning. We've got a sentence that just says the use of not more than 3 boarders or lodgers, not members of the family. And right now, that seems to be what we're hanging our hat on to allow these in the first place. There are a lot of other codes that mesh a lot better with their zoning code, and I think it would be a good idea for Two Rivers to consider revamping a little bit to combine those 2 pieces, because this chapter 6, the section that specifically deals with tourist rooming houses, is rather robust and limits people who want to just apply for a house, in that it requires a background check and all this information. But the zoning code does not work very well with that, does not mesh very closely with that. So the limitations, as far as statutory limitations go, this is chapter 66 generally, sections 0615 deals with the room tax, and then 66.1014 deals with limitations on the municipality for regulating these. So rentals can't be prohibited for durations of 7 days or longer, up to 30 days, at which point they can be regulated again, or rather prohibited again, and regulated more closely. The rentals, short-term rentals need to be, can be very, much more tightly regulated. The rentals between 7 and 29 days can be limited to 6 months out of the year, consecutive from the first rental, but that's about it. For other municipalities, at a place like Madison, for example, they want to discourage rentals. And if Two Rivers is interested in discouraging rentals, some pieces you might consider are occupancy requirements. So the city of Madison requires 12 months of occupancy before starting a tourist rooming house. They require building inspection prior to a permit, floor plans submitted to the city, valid photo ID. The fee similarly low, but the amount of renting that can be done is very limited. You have to put your ID on every advertisement. The host's name has to be on every advertisement. You have to maintain a guest registry for everybody. So there's a lot that we could do to limit rentals in the city. On the other hand, a place like Tomahawk, there's a permit application where you provide contact information. You pay $5 for each location that you rent, and you pay a $5,000 bond to the city. And as long as you pay your room tax, that's all you have to do. There are plenty of things in between. Village of Lake Delton basically requires that you have a property manager and tracks the property managers more closely, allows for maintaining clearer records. If that's what Two Rivers is interested in. More monthly rental reports. You can revoke for getting certain numbers of complaints. You have the power to revoke this license. You can require certain amounts of occupancy, and that's part of what brought this up in the first place, was occupancy questions. Limits on occupancy, again, through the zoning power. An expected occupant load, so occupants are generally tied to the square footage of the home for the purposes of a fire code. And that provides a very clear base in reasoning. We want to avoid any sort of arbitrary or capricious reasons for limiting the number of people who can be in a home. So picking something like 200 square feet per person, or 2 people per bedroom plus 2, tying into a specific amount of space available in a home is going to help avoid that standard. The zoning in Two Rivers, that standard is not defined currently. We don't have rooming house, for example, defined. Boarding house is not currently defined or rather, boarding house includes meals in the zoning code. And so these things should be addressed in the zoning code and at least tied to the other section, specifically on tourist rooming houses in chapter 6. Some issues that have arisen that I see in this code as far as issues with interpretation. With that borders language, not members of the family, we're looking at a definition of family which can reach that arbitrary and capricious standard in terms of regulating based on, well, are they married, are they adopted, are people related by blood, how do we enforce that limitation? And then if somebody is renting a house, do they count as the family? Can they have guests over? Do those count as the borders at that point? So what I would like to know from you and what I think would be best for the board to discuss here, because this is a political issue, is how do you want to regulate it? Because you've got a lot of power to limit or control or track the people who rent out tourist rooming houses. But right now, your code doesn't do a great job of working cohesively. And so if you can come up with goals for how you want to regulate these in the city, we can help reach those goals with language in your ordinances to tie these things together. Yeah, that's most of it.
And and certainly you'll.
What do you mean by limits of occupancy?
So, yeah, right now, the limit on occupancy that the city of Two Rivers has is, as I described, that no more than 3 boarders or lodgers not members of the family.
Yeah.
So is that defined by family?
How is family defined?
Yeah.
1 or more persons related by blood, marriage, adoption, or a group of not more than 4 persons who need not be related, living together as a single housekeeping organization. Includes any domestic servants and not more than 1 gratuitous guest residing with said family.
It's a jump there.
Sounds like the whole family is gratuitous, so.
Yeah.
I guess,
It can be, you could have a family of 20, you could have a family of 2 under this definition. It's going to be hard to enforce.
Oh, sorry, Mark, go ahead.
I have some questions for you in the details of what the codes are. I guess I want to get to the big picture is, do we have a problem? And first I'd address the police department. Are you getting undue calls from, I guess we have 60 in our community, less than 1% of houses. Are you getting flooded calls and extra visits required?
I know it's skipping ahead, you know, you just get.
If there aren't any objections, we did have the opportunity for the chief to report on the extent to which the police department has been called upon to respond to short-term rentals or vacation rentals. Sounds like Ben LaFleur is
Yeah,
yours.
absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, so I looked through with the help of Joe. We had, well, maybe we had a little discrepancy, but 47 registered at some point in time, which fell in line with what I was seeing on Airbnb, VRBO, et cetera. Of those total calls per year, 2022, we had 7. This is all calls. 2023, we had 26, and 2024, we currently have 23. Total founded code, ordinance, criminal offenses, so something where we actually had to take action. So if you can imagine, you could have a noise complaint where we take action, you could have an alcohol complaint where we take action, a fight where we might take action, something like that, where there's an arrest, a citation, a warning, something like that. Versus we could have a suspicious person that we get called to, an alarm we get called to, those would be more service calls. So the first that I gave you, 7, 26, and 23, were total calls of service. Total founded calls, ordinance, criminal offenses, and any short-term rental. In 2022, we had 3 of them. One was long grass, one was 48-hour parking, and one was trash. In 2023, we had none. In 2024, we had noise, an underage drinking party at one of them, parking 2 feet from a curb instead of 4, so 3 in 2024 that were founded. In addition, I looked back at some of the past emails that were sent to council. There was a trespassing complaint for a dog on a leash that crossed the property. However, it did leave when told that it was trespassing. According to ordinance and criminal, that is not an offense at that point because it did exactly what it was told. They moved the dog. We also had unknown dog feces found in the yard, unfounded, not knowing who the dog owner was. And we couldn't prove that. Again, the blocking of the driveway, that was a violation. It wasn't blocking the driveway, but it was within 2 feet and it needs to be outside of 4 feet. Also a noise complaint, unfounded. That was regarding people leaving a short-term rental. That was only after the police response to the parking violation, so that wasn't a founded complaint. We also had additional dog barking complaints that were unfounded. In essence, there was at least one where a dog was barking, and upon the owner telling it to stop barking, it stops. So whether or not that continues to be an ongoing thing is still kind of pending. And then since then, we also had 2 counter harassment complaints about those complainants. So again, those were all in 23 to 24.
Are they spread across all 47 then, or are they concentrated in certain areas?
I don't have exactly what that is, so the 2 things I can tell you is there's a very limited amount of short-term rentals that have had issues. I would say probably about 4 of them in particular. One of them is nonstop alarms, it seemed to be, was an issue. So for instance, in 2024, there was at least 10 of them almost in a row in the beginning of the year. So of those 23 calls, you could take 10 of them off just for false alarms because they had an alarm issue. I would also say that what I found, and I didn't do all the numbers to show you, but there are a number of these properties where prior to 2022 and them being a short-term rental property, there were several properties, I would say probably at least a half dozen, where it was multiple police responses to said address until it became a short-term rental. So there's also that. So there's both ways of looking at these.
So nothing very serious.
No.
And most of these things are things that have happened to me that I don't think I've ever called to. So I don't think anyone that's
Well,
2 feet from my driveway, I don't think I've ever called the cops around those dog feces.
but I would also argue that the other side of the coin would be people would say that, you know, kind of like with golf carts, figure that, you know, well, it's because people just aren't calling, but there's still an issue. So take that for what you want. I'm just looking at it from all the ways for you guys. But of reported is what I can present to you, nothing more.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
I have another question about, maybe Matt can answer this. are we treating a short-term rent from things like property taxes, utilities, and other services that the city does? Are they paying equal amount to, it's not a STR compared to a regular rent? In other words, like any breaks in utilities or property tax, anything like that?
There wouldn't be any break, they're using sewer, water, electric, all as any other residential.
So some of the things are written, utilities, property taxes, that's not true, they're paying their fair share, right?
They should be.
Not to put a spin on it, because I don't think they're my comments you've read, but I think what we hear is that whether it's vacation rentals or people that buy homes for seasonal for second home market, they don't tend to be there every day using water, sewer, electricity to the extent a year-round resident does. So point of fact, there's less revenue. I would also point out those can be people that have lived in Two Rivers all their lives and are successful to the point where they go away for the winter. There are people that don't occupy their home year-round. By definition, unless they do an awful lot of laundry and flush extra when they are here, they're probably going to use less than a year-round resident. I think that may be more the point, the seasonality or this, but again, that's in my interpretation. One question that I have, and I had it for Jack Bruce as well, Andrew, I don't doubt that there are areas in our zoning ordinance that need updating, but as far, I can rent a house for, say, a typical residential lease on an annual basis, and I can have as much company as I want. If they're not paying, I'm the one paying the lease. That's where the payment's coming from. There's one lessee, and I don't think I'm restricted on my guests unless it can be shown I'm charging them, and then they'd be boarders or tenants. So is it really a problem if, usually with the short-term rental, there is a party whose name is on the contract and whose credit card is encumbered, and they have guests? I just throw that argument out there because I think if we were to strictly enforce the thing about tenants, however, Attorney Bruce pointed out, board usually implies they're getting fed, room and board. But I guess I can see the need for better definitions. I don't know that our current definition blows a hole in the ability of an individual who has rented a property for a short period of time to have guests, whether they're family members or not. That'd probably be up to a court if it was litigated, but I'd rather have a good definition. But you see my point there?
Well,
We don't run around telling people that do regular residential rentals, you can only have so many guests.
True, and I would say to push back slightly, just the strictest definition here, it looks like you can have a guest at your house right now. Based on the family definition here, along with the use in the zoning code, that the number of guests you can have at your house looks like one. Which
We got a real problem with compliance then.
which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
yeah,
Of course,
absolutely bizarre.
no one would take it to that extreme, but
No, that'll keep the relatives away at the holidays.
yeah.
Okay.
So that's, I think it could be read either way there, yeah.
Did we have any means of fining somebody if they weren't following the law?
Sure. Yeah, in the, you've got your standards that people are required to meet for their short-term rentals. So if they fail that, so noise levels, signage, advertising is not allowed, so if they put up a sign, RVs, you've got a whole list that, if they violate that, there's a penalty section here that allows for license revocation, so no one will be able to have those rentals. And of course, there's also just the regular citations that anybody else can get for breaking the ordinances.
Is that a state law or
That's Two Rivers ordinances.
Rivers ordinance?
Our ordinance.
And what number is that ordinance?
So that's section 613, licensing of short-term rentals.
Again, if anybody wants paper copies, so they were in the packet.
Like I said, this section is quite good. I think works well as a standalone section, it just doesn't tie in very well to the zoning in terms of using those same terms in the zoning code, that kind of thing.
Our neighboring city of Manitowoc, I understand, is just now considering an ordinance that would for the first time have local licensing or registration of vacation rentals, which we did about a year and a half ago. That's the current ordinance that's in front of you. Sturgeon Bay, as near as I can tell, is not terribly stringent. They recently amended their ordinance because they were the subject of, I believe, the State Realtors Association threatened or initiated litigation, and their change related primarily to changing a requirement that the responsible party for the property be within Door County, Kewaunee, or Brown, I believe, and they changed that to either a distance or a time requirement. Doesn't look like Kewaunee and Algoma have much other than what we do. Port Washington, I would put on the spectrum of vacation rental friendly. There are other Door County communities that are beyond Sturgeon Bay that are much more stringent to varying degrees. We certainly here at Dane County, there have been reasons, probably driven mostly by Packer-related rentals, that have driven changes in Ashwaubenon, Pierce, some of the Green Bay area communities. So, not saying this is not a controversial issue in some areas. There are cities, communities where there's been considerable pushback against vacation rentals for various reasons. Question for you as policymakers and with input from the public you serve, are we at that point? Still doesn't mean we should clean up the zoning code and maybe do some tweaking of this ordinance. Are we at that point, or how do you assure that you don't have the momentum that you're well past a tipping point when you see it coming? So, I know there's a variety of opinions out there, and you may or may not hear some tonight. But there's also been a lot of positive, and no, there's not a tourism study to quantify it, as has been pointed out. We certainly can point to a number of properties that have seen major investment in upgrading to serve that market.
And improvement in appearance too.
And I'm not saying I can gauge the economic impact. I know people that have, whose first exposure to Two Rivers was staying, they might have stayed at a hotel as well, but have stayed at vacation rentals that are now residents of this community. It was their introduction. So it's a mixed bag on the views out there. I don't know that anybody would want to wake up one morning and look up and down the block and see that every house in their neighborhood had become a vacation rental. That's maybe one extreme. We aren't getting that many complaints on this issue. So I'll pull back and be quiet here for policymakers, but I think many people perceive it as a net good for the community.
I was gonna say, do you want to give us what we know about STRs and Two Rivers?
Joe, do you have some information you wish to share as well, our tourism director?
We did get, everybody needs today's update. Here's how to move fast.
So year to date, we are up double-digit percentages. That also takes into account what goes into the housing trust. So from a revenue standpoint, we're moving in the right direction there. We're still on a growth mode. The number of rentals that I have, what can you put in?
Yes, thank you, please.
And then on the back side, there's a PowerPoint slide that Manuel County presented into the total number of short-term rentals that are registered in the county, and then they break that apart by community as well. But as of, October 1st, we had, that I had on my books, 47 short-term rentals that were registered with the city of Two Rivers. 2 of them are not renewing for 2025. And then I was able to track down 25 that are listed on various platforms that you could actually rent a short-term facility at. 25 of those that are within the city of Two Rivers.
That are registered with us.
That are not registered with us, and they're not registered with Manitowoc County Health Department as well.
How can I fix that?
It's a great question, Mark. I think it's probably working with Manitowoc County, looking at what our ordinances and tightening up what our procedures are as well on how we track short-term rentals year in and year out and our renewal, how we're going about doing that.
So you have 25 addresses where these people are not using don't have a license?
Yeah, good question, Bill. So I got 25 names that I was able to cross-reference, about 22 of those to an exact address, and 3 of those I wasn't able to define the exact street number for that, other than I know that they fall within the city of Two Rivers.
So the only action we really have is to tell the county about it and ask them to
At this point,
do something.
Sometimes you go online, you can either recognize the property or the view out the front window if there's the right shot.
yeah. And I did that, and I know Mr. Robitaille did the same strategy. We were really looking like, was there a water tower in the background, and could we figure out where that street was, or, could you look at and see what the front porch looked like? And then we were down into the fine details of trying to figure out where those properties were and which addresses were.
These properties are listed on Airbnb or website?
Correct, yeah.
Really?
Booking.com or Airbnb or other platforms.
I think that should be a point tonight, we should come to a conclusion, we should pursue that. Because if I'm looking at 251, which is like 12% over last year, that's a lot of money in room tax collection. And if I recall, about 38% of that is room tax generated from these short-term rentals, which would be about $95,000. That means we're losing $50,000 a year by these 25 roughly.
And that's not necessarily true. So it doesn't mean that we're not collecting room tax for them. It just means that they're not registered with the city of Two Rivers. So we have 3 different ways that we get revenue when it comes to room tax. So if you look in the bottom right-hand corner of the dashboard, you've got hotels and motel. That is a revenue category. You've got short-term rentals, and then you've got a large one that's called Marketplace. And I reached out to multiple DMOs, tourism directors across the state, my peer group. I heard back from 7 of them. They all face the same challenge that we do, in that we don't have a way to define line item. Is it hotels? Is it motels? Is it short-term rentals that comprises that marketplace revenue that we get quarterly? So when you look on that dashboard, you'll see that September is one of those months where you see a big bump up in our revenue. That's that marketplace deposit that comes in. And then that comes in through various collection platforms where you're going on and you're signing up for your short-term rental, and then that platform is then turning the room tax revenue over to us.
So then what I think I'm hearing is that online marketplace represents collections we receive from platforms.
Correct.
But I thought we weren't able to determine if that collection we receive monthly from the platform included all short-term rentals or platform users, and did it include the 25 that you don't think are on platforms that are licensed with us in the city?
Well, they're still using a booking platform. That's how I was able to find them. So the 25 that are not registered with the city of Two Rivers, I found them, and Andre can jump in on this one too if you want, but the way I found them and tried to locate what the address was to see if they really were registered, not registered, was going into all of the different booking platforms and then looking for the city of Two Rivers and then cross-referencing all those. So if they're registered through a booking platform, they're just not registered with the city of Two Rivers.
And that means they're not meeting our license requirements, they may not be.
They may not be.
Inspection by the fire department, meeting all the other parameters that we demand these to do. How come we fix that? We gotta fix that.
And in a perfect world, we get a list of that marketplace deposit that comes to us on a quarter basis, and we'd be able to cross-reference that line item by what's the property and what was the total dollar amount that was deposited in that 3-month period. But we just don't have that capacity within how the statute is written at the state level.
When the state passes laws, they take into account a lot of different interest groups, and some of them bring a lot more money to the state capital and to politicians, war chests, and cities do. And it's great that now the online platforms have to collect and remit to the municipalities, and these payments come in quarterly, right, Joe?
Yep.
Money that they collect on behalf of the properties that book through the online platforms. But there was no provision in the bill to provide the subsidiary detail to those municipalities. How crazy is that? We get quarterly checks that are so big, they're scary. It's scary because you don't know exactly what properties they're coming from.
We did have one municipality that got back to us and said that they do a self-reporting document that they send out to their registered short-term rentals. And it's a self-reporting document. And they said we still miss it, but at least we're capturing a little bit of a snapshot of what is in that one-time lump sum deposit with that self-reporting that they've worked out with their short-term rental community. But they're not getting everything.
I did a little research, and I saw some companies, software programs that claim they can help make sure that all road taxes are being collected. See if we looked at any options.
So there's different things that we can look at, and one of the more common that's been talked about in the last couple of weeks here is AirDNA. But once again, it's not 100% accurate. They're collecting data just like we're trying to collect data. So there's no perfect tool out there where we're able to say, we have this exact number of short-term rentals. This is the ones that are registered, and here's how they're paying their taxes. And yeah, it's not a perfect system when it comes to that tracking and quantifying it.
That is a concern because those 25, again, could be skirting some practical safety things, right? We don't know who's gonna stay in those 25. They're not keeping records like we require the other licensed rentals.
Because we don't know the address on all of them, for example, the data that Ben gave us, there may be one or two that maybe there is a call that's going in more frequent when we just don't know what the address is. We're working on internal processes on how we're doing a better job of tracking that. And Jessica, the health department, was very helpful today. And I think moving forward, working hand in hand with Manitowoc County Health Department, we're probably going to tighten that up just internally with what we're working on right now.
You might want to look at GovOS. It's a software company that promotes itself as assistance to cities for collection of that, to ensure that it's all in compliance. And that way we don't have to dedicate our own resources. We don't have time. It's expensive to do. It may help us. I'll give you that later.
What have you heard, Joe? You mentioned you've talked to other tourism organizations around the state. Is it a mixed bag out there? I'm sure some are trying to try some of the software packages.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody's got the perfect thing yet, because I think most municipalities are still in the stage in varying degrees of where we're at having this conversation tonight. So they're still trying to figure out what's the norm for their community, what works best for the residents and those people that are providing those short-term rentals, and then what do we have available to us in tracking tools or the tools that they have available internally to be able to put that all together. And as Greg had pointed out, in looking over the weekend at different communities, the dynamics around short-term rental for every community in the state is not a one-size-fits-all. I think it's just kind of always be, to a certain degree, work in progress, because it's a changing landscape for us. The fact that we're digging into it so deeply and having a good, solid, good conversation about it, I think it puts us ahead of the curve, based on what I'm hearing with what other municipalities and cities are doing with the city. I think we're putting ourselves in a good spot.
Chief, does that cause a problem for you? These people are operating and you don't know who's staying there.
Right, but I don't think that's much of an enforcement thing that I can really enforce. Again, it's probably more of a zoning issue.
Okay.
Where he's got a few more teeth in it, but yeah, we probably come to investigate with how you enforce that, how you discover that it's up.
How should we attach zoning to our ordinance?
Well, so one of the ways a lot of municipalities have done this is using conditional use permits to have this as a use for various districts. There's requirements that you can put in with the conditional use permit that allows for tighter regulation there. There's obviously, if you want to just be allowed in something like a commercial district or something, industrial district, you can, but in zoning, that ties in better, and then also simply just using some of the terms from short-term rentals. So right now, short-term rental is not part of the zoning code that I can tell. I think it's allowed under various terms in R1 here, but it's not used specifically. That makes things unclear.
So you're saying we'd have to create a conditional use for short-term rentals?
You don't have to. I think you could. I think it can also be regulated through, I mean, you already require a license.
Right.
And all of the terms tied to that, I think can be used just as well.
To answer you as well, I think what would be more enforceable is like it's spoken about occupancy, like, you know, if you have 2+2 per room, something like that, where you can actually number that out. Because that would benefit on both sides. I've stayed at them too, where you're looking for your family, you want to know like what the occupancy is and whether it's feasible and how you fit people. I think it's important on both sides. That would be something that'd be a lot more enforceable, easier to do. Along with, say, a restaurant, you know, where you know who the overnight guests are.
And instruction and inspected by the fire department ensure it's safe for habitation. Too, that's a benefit that.
Sure, that would really be enforceable on our end, that would be more health department, fire department, code stuff again. I'm saying as far as when you're talking about occupancy from my standpoint, that would be something that would be simplified.
We talk about Letcher, are you looking for everyone that's staying there? Or are you just looking to see who rented it?
I'm saying one or the other, like.
I mean, because I know that.
It doesn't matter if you have overnight guests and you have occupancy, it's one thing. Like hotel, motel, we have an issue with one of them in town, where they're not keeping the proper ledger, which they're required to. And therefore we're having all kinds of issues. And it's just one more way to back up that they had knowledge or should have known on the front end who they were renting to.
Right, so it's just the person who rented it.
Right.
You're not looking for the entire
In that case.
amount or names of everyone that's staying.
Correct, but some, like you mentioned, maybe that it's more limited. If you're looking to super limit them, you can certainly do that.
Yeah, right now, it's
I'm
just,
saying from my standpoint, I think it would be easiest if you had just an occupancy number, because I think even just for me, if I'm living here, to have guests over, we've already shown that that's got some discrepancy that we wouldn't agree with one person, but if you had something, a combination or whatever, some sort of calculation that you put a definitive number on.
I don't think I'd want to see a whole ledger of who the hell's staying there. What happens if they lie? Who's in trouble? Who's at fault for that? I mean, when I go to a hotel, I don't always tell them, right? Number of people? Big deal. What's it to them? I'm renting that space, not them. That's my privacy. I'm not listing everyone that's there. You're renting the hotel room with me. It sleeps X, and X is who's coming, whether you like it or not.
So preference wise, I would just say what would be important for me for enforcement is that if you're looking for us to better enforce, it would be one name on a ledger, so you can hold that person liable as well as the owner. So you got two people there, if need be, because it could be one or the other. You know, it could become a chronic nuisance where you need to ultimately go after the owner, or it could be the once in a while thing where you just get a bad renter, you go after that person that's causing the problem. And then also have an occupancy, just so you can put anywhere else.
I'm just saying, who gets into trouble for the occupancy?
I think that would be the renter, again, the one that's signing off and showing his license on the ledger.
Right, I just don't know what happens to them. I mean, what if it's not necessarily staying there, but coming and going? I mean, how do you define who's staying there overnight? Are we gonna check every hour to make sure they're not sleeping? And is there not just having guests there?
That's a difficulty, but in the same respect, all you have is, say you have 1,000 people there, all you need is the one person saying that 9 people stayed there instead of 8, and that's enough for us to write a citation.
So let's say at two people per bedroom, that'd be a good occupancy number. So if the place had 5 bedrooms, 10 people could stay there.
I think that's what he was mentioning.
Yeah, that- Or is that already on the books?
What about the pull-up coach?
What about the kid in a pack and play?
You can have play those places up, is that.
I have one.
You know,
I have
first,
one.
We just came back from vacation traveling once with the grandchild.
Repeat that, Ben.
You may have that, it's like, even if you look at places up where they limit it to say 6 people, because like Adams, they have 2 double beds and there's 1 pull-up, so they don't allow 6 people. You get that in hotels too. I think that would be something where you get reasonable. Or you have, 2 beds and you have room for a blow-up mattress or whatever they want to define, but that you have it actually defined on what it is.
I would agree with what Greg said though earlier with the pack and play. How do you, that's legit.
Yeah.
I mean, my wife and I sleep in the bed and then the kids sleep in the pack and play. It's, for those of you that don't know, portable, play tents essentially, right? So I mean, if my 2 kids sleep in there and we sleep in the bed, is it really harmful having 4 people in that bed? Where the hell are they supposed to go?
He did mention the 2 plus 2, so.
Yeah, there's earlier.
I don't know, it seems to me that it should be a combination of the fire department and the people who are renting it out. And that would be determined by how many beds there are, how many people that they want. And if it's within the fire department's number of occupants that are allowed. And you gotta remember that the people who own these businesses, I think that they have a pretty good understanding that if something happens, they're going to be responsible for a lot of things. So they kind of police themselves. And if I had spent a lot of money fixing up the place, I would want to make sure that I've got somebody coming in who is not going to destroy it. So I think they're looking at renters, under the microscope. I would hope, I would.
I've noticed quite a few of the ordinances cite DAT cap, a DAT cap standard,
The cap standard, there's also.
7214.
You already require a register, a 2-year register. So that's full name, current address of the person renting the property, time of rental, monetary amount paid. And that's to be available to the city. Looks like it's upon request, so you have to ask them for it. But you do have a lot of those particular considerations in there. The occupancy is, I think, an open question.
And actually, DAT cap, I thought, oh gee, let's seize on this, but I don't know if the health department already enforces that, because aren't they acting as an agent for DAT cap in their licensing? And by reading it, I'll just read it, it didn't do much for me. Each sleeping room shall be of sufficient size to afford at least 400 cubic feet of airspace for each occupant, 12 years of age or older. So 5 by 10 with an 8-foot ceiling is 1 person. So 10, if I'm doing my math right, 8 by 10 with an 8-foot ceiling is, or 10 by 10 is 2
by 10 bedroom having 2 people.
10 by 10 bedroom, 2 people. And if they're kids, it's down to 200 square feet. Oh, and the ceilings have to have, ceiling height of at least 7 feet, which is probably a good thing. But it's not terribly strenuous, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But probably, face it, right now at least, we don't have Daytona Beach style crowding going on in vacation rentals. I don't think any of us wants that, the party house kind of thing. I don't know that we experience any of that. And I'm not so sure that DAC 7214 applies anyway. But maybe not if it's adopted by reference. That would be at least a standard that's out there and a number of other cities have.
If we go back to what Carla was saying, just for a point of emphasis too, is I would say almost 50% of the calls probably were actually the owners of Airbnbs calling us in to have us go look into the renters and what they were doing at their said residence, which I found unique as well. In two of the cases, which were, one was the UAL, the underage drinking, so they actually knew something inappropriate was taking place, and another one was a noise complaint. So those two were actually reported by the owners. So I would agree that usually the Airbnbs are caring about who they're renting to, what's going on in their places. And a lot of more suspicious people that were reported that people staying in Airbnbs. So a combination of that was probably 50%. Which is good to hear.
Yeah, go ahead.
A question for Joe. You said there were 25 not licensed with the city. You are cross-referencing that with the health department? Maybe they are registered with the health department already?
I've got to send that over to Jessica, but I was hoping to we can track down those last couple that I don't have the address for.
Okay, can you follow up with us at if you find out if they are registered or not registered?
I will get.
Thank you.
But Jessica only has a total of how many registered in Two Rivers?
Her total is the same as mine.
Right, and so that delta is still there between yours and the county.
But Doug, you were asking me to send her those that I have found, correct?
That are registered with the city, to see if they are registered with the county.
But they're not.
They're not, the number's the same.
Okay. That answers my question. But they do need to get the county license first before they can get the.
That's a prerequisite for the city license, you're correct.
So who goes and enforces the fact that they're operating without a license? Do we know?
I would say the county would have to. It should be county.
County sheriff?
Well, the coming from the health department, the county sheriff should be the enforcer of it. In my opinion. I mean, state law brings it to the county health department, from my understanding.
I can't speak to the motivation or resources that are available to county health to do that,
No, but it'd be
Yeah.
their
but
responsibility.
it would be their
Given
responsibility.
from state
Yeah.
statute.
Go ahead, Mark.
I don't know exactly what the final objective of tonight is, but I'm gonna say, from what I've heard, I don't think we have a problem. To me, it's a small percentage of short-term rentals in the state. It doesn't sound like there's a safety standpoint from the police department, and it sounds like they're paying their fair share. There's a lot of information out there that got organized citizens, and I want to respond to the citizens who are concerned. First of all, I don't think short-term rentals raises the price of housing. Housing is going up everywhere. The prime locations demand, like Lakeshore property, and Riverside properties, demand the prime price. If you can't control what the owner sells it to an individual at a higher price and outbid somebody else in the market, that's not our ability to control it. That's just financial reality. But I do think maybe we can look at some of these issues and tweak some of the things that we could make it better. But I think it's a positive for economic development and tourism in our community. We're getting almost $100,000 that's going to come over to Two Rivers. It's growing. 3 or 4 years ago, short-term rentals wasn't even in the books. I mean, it's evolution is growing all over in all cities. So I don't think we have a problem now. But whatever we can do to make it better for the residents that are concerned, I think we should look at it. But short-term rentals, in my mind, are good for economic development. I know 3 people who came here, stayed in short-term rentals, and they're buying out. So it does drive.
I'd like to,
Yeah, Bonnie.
this whole, this whole thing started because some residents came and said, a short-term rental has lights so bright, they're shining into our yard, our windows. We have ordinances on our books that say you're not supposed to let light trespass into somebody's yard. Even if you're a parking lot, you're not supposed to. And now this is becoming a debate of if we should have them. First of all, I'd like to know why people are against them. And I guess the whole thing, it just seems screwed up to me. I hope we can go away from here saying that short-term rentals do not have the right to let their lights trespass into other people's yards. Do you have lights on yours? Your short-term rentals? I hate that word, short-term rentals, that's hard to say. Do you? I don't, that's why you're here, right? You guys over there?
Yeah, we manage them. We don't have lights that shine into neighboring properties and
See, I mean, some of the short-term rental people are probably polite, but some aren't. I guess that is, to me, that's the biggest thing. They were hoping that that would pass, that they wouldn't have to put up with that. And that last thing, I know I jumped to number 4 and I apologize. But I don't know if it hurts to at least look into some of this stuff of finding out why some people don't want them. And at least keep their lights out of their yard.
I just want to say that as far as the lights went, there were 4 city council members who went over to the neighbors who had an issue with it. And we came away seeing that we could not find a problem.
And
So we went and we did engage with the next door neighbor. So we are responsive to people's concerns. And out of the 4 of us, we couldn't find an issue.
What?
For the lights, 4 of us went,
There wasn't a problem.
So you
In our
don't think
opinion, we
that-
didn't think there was a problem with the lights.
But nobody was staying there at the time.
Well,
but the
right,
lights were on.
there were some
in the
lights that were
backyard.
on, yeah. So we went to their house
They
to
were
full.
not
No,
It's
it was-
fixed now?
They were not on and we didn't come upstairs, so that's.
You said that they were on, you were
We said
pointing
some
out.
of them were on, they weren't all on. And you didn't come upstairs.
You said we couldn't go upstairs.
I did not say you couldn't.
You said.
Okay,
your son
this
was-
is why we're not here.
I asked to go upstairs and we were denied.
Okay, sorry.
So anyways, back to the short-term rentals.
That should actually be a nuisance,
Correct.
and that should be for Ben to decide if the lights are too bright is that what I would expect you would do, right?
We have in the past years.
So it's really not up to us to decide that.
I think there was discussion though that there could be stuff done to our lighting ordinance to make it better. So that was our
That way.
proposal, so that's something that you guys would have to decide on. So to be clear, those are 2 different topics, short-term rentals and a lighting ordinance.
Right.
And again, both could probably be made better enforceable.
And we should look at that.
Yeah, Tim.
It was brought up about short-term rentals being in zoning R1, and according to the state law here, it says that they can be there, just so that, I don't know, the people don't have the same information we have.
Right, yeah. Thank you.
Does that fit with does R1 zoning fit with our ordinance?
Well, so the specific phrase short-term rental or tourist rooming house or that kind of thing is not used in the zoning, but what is used is this, boarders or lodgers, not members of the family, which I think, because you can have people in your home, in R1, that's what allows this to take place. And there's, otherwise it's difficult to say where the zoning code this is allowed otherwise.
Because people are renting it or using it to relax and hang out with a family, would,
Right.
it's not considered commercial, where if they were there building a bunch of stuff in a garage or something, that'd be different.
It's largely consistent with the residential.
Yes.
Granted, there's turnover and people may all be in vacation mode at all times, and that creates some external effects. But they're sleeping, they're cooking, they're doing things that people do in houses. I guess to Bonnie's point, and you have a petition in front of you, and to the extent you want to engage the folks that circulated the petition tonight, that's up to council. But the argument has gone well beyond lighting. And that is something you can regulate citywide, because a neighbor that doesn't give a rip about a bright floodlight shining in my backyard can be just as annoying year round as a vacation property next door. But I think you're you know, it's at least put forward that it's impacting housing supply and demand and contributing to escalation of prices. I don't need to make the argument, but you've got it in front of you. It isn't just about lighting. It's about the market impacts and the neighborhood impacts. I'm not saying I agree with that or disagree with it, but and those aren't unusual arguments. There are a lot of cities where it's been identified that there's a need for greater regulation of vacation rentals. Again, is Two Rivers at that point? That's the question that's in front of you.
Does any of the municipalities that you've looked at limit the number of short-term rentals that can be in a 1 block or 2 block or 3 block?
So we've not seen that so much yet as far as density goes, but I think it's something that we could certainly experiment with, work on, if that's something that the city of Two Rivers wants to implement. I think it fits in with the zoning power of the city to determine densities of population. So I think it's something that we could potentially do, but I haven't seen it.
How do we legally control it, though, as a city? If I own a house on the lakefront and I want to sell it, I get 3 bids, one happens to be a short-term rental buyer, and he's the highest price, how are we going to tell the city, the owner of the property, you can't sell it? By the rule, they can't have it on that block or what?
It's like a license.
Yeah, it's like a license for anything else. You know, if you buy a bar that doesn't have an alcohol license yet, but you want to get one, and you know there's one available, you're not guaranteed that license for buying the bar. That's the same situation there. If somebody wants to come in and run a short-term rental and they buy a house for that purpose and find out after the fact that they don't qualify for the license, they made a poor commercial decision. Oops.
Do you think we could go that?
And wouldn't it be fair to say also, Andrew, that because the city addresses this presently under licensing, as the owner of a vacation rental, you're somewhat vulnerable because that could change. Once you've memorialized something as at least as a permitted use or have granted a conditional use, there's more of a vested right to keep using the property for that. And
Yeah, true.
right now, it's all about, do you have a license or not? And next year, the requirements for a license could change dramatically. So there is, the people that have invested in properties as vacation rentals, they do have a risk there. But I just would point that out.
Both, and you can also attach the licensing to the room tax. You could have a room tax permit. That's something that a lot of other municipalities do as well.
So that's like the Madison example where you need your assigned room tax number, and that has to appear in any of your advertising. That at least ties back to a database.
And that's how, for example, if you search a property on one of the websites online in Madison and you don't see somebody's face on it, you know that they're not complying with the regulations, they're not licensed by the city, they haven't been properly vetted. There are various ways that, regulation can also improve people's trust in the product and make it a better thing for people in the end.
So does that number even have to appear in their verbal listing or their Airbnb listing?
Everything.
Interesting.
And so it comes down to whether you want to tighten up control on these things, or, leaving it as you've got, there, again, don't seem to be any problems, but it's how you want to deal with them.
Joe, not to put you on the spot, but sorry, Mr. President, if I might, as you've looked at the ordinance, are there any tweaks or improvements that you would see as making sense?
Well, I agree with Ben that defining some of those things that he can follow up or his department can follow up on would make a lot of sense. The tracking method of having a license number that is defined for each property as we're going through and we're cross-checking those properties that are listed on those various public sites with who we have on record would be very beneficial for us.
I wonder how Madison enforces that with the online platforms. How do they make sure they do that?
As far as I understand, they have a full-time staff member who just, their whole job is enforcing that piece of the code.
Gotcha.
I don't think Two Rivers is quite at that point.
We did skip, oh, sorry, go ahead, Jen. I think, yeah, you've been waiting for it.
Okay,
Go ahead.
it does sound like our language, some of it does need to be cleaned up or redefined. To kind of, like, we don't wanna have a problem if, something does and we do become a touristy spot. And so I understand where people are coming from, that we wanna get ahead of the problem and be proactive. So cleaning up the language seems like a good idea.
Okay, we do have some citizens here.
Scott, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Tim.
I had a question. What does the background check and stuff for the licensee all consist of? Because what can they be denied for? The background check.
So in essence, anytime that there's a background check done, it would have to be something related directly to,
Like if they were known to have rundown buildings that they were renting out or something?
so like, from your standpoint, you're more familiar with beverage operating.
Yeah.
So, you could have a bunch of misdemeanor batteries, you could have been in a bunch of fights, you could have been disorderly, all those things. You could have a laundry list of those, and I can't deny you for that. Now, if you had nonstop DUIs and you're serving to minors repeatedly, that would be something directly related to your license where then I can take action. So in this case, or a bunch of felony offenses is kind of across the board where you can deny that premise.
But you couldn't deny a felon from having a rental property, depending on what the felony is
Potentially,
for.
yeah,
So
potentially.
I don't know if that would be legal.
If you arrest to that level, or say a sex offender.
I think we've discussed this briefly. There's probably like with alcohol licensing, you should be able, without having a laundry list in the ordinance, these are the specific offenses or convictions, but the city at the end of the day ought to be able to show a reasonable relationship to the licensed activity.
And that's not something I just take willy-nilly.
It's like something that would be a crime.
That's something.
I would just there's probably a short list of things for denying them.
Yeah, so it's material omissions or inaccurate statements in the application. Is a specific piece, repeated complaints of a material nature by authorities in which the applicant or property manager conducted in similar business. So that would be where we're getting into, noise complaints from their properties, that kind of thing. Criminal convictions, material related to the services, and then failing to comply with provisions of the application process. So, if you didn't provide all of your information, or if you, had already been operating without a license or that kind of thing.
An example might be if, let's say you have a short-term rental and now you're applying, and I know that I have a laundry list of identity theft felonies with you because you're stealing some of the information. What I would do then is, one, I would raise a flag to me, and then two, I would be in contact with our city attorney saying, this is what I think, what are your suggestions? Is this enough to take a stand on to revoke this and bring it before council? And that's when we would show up before council, and you guys would make that determination. That's typically how it works.
There is an appeal process if the license is denied.
So, we do have people from the public that are here with us this evening, and on the agenda it does say feedback from local residents. So, if anyone wants to speak about anything that we've talked about or any of your own thoughts, I invite you to do so now. If you want to, you don't have to. Exactly.
Sure, wasn't prepared, but I'm my best. So I wasn't planning on talking, but I did see that agenda item that says feedback from the public, and I know it's been brought up a number of times. I kind of knew how this was gonna go, because we've been talking about this for a year, and I can tell, me as the complainant, it's not gonna go anywhere. So in a matter of between 3 p.m. on Saturday and today at about the same time, or 2 p.m. on Saturday to 3 p.m. today, I handed you 75, there was actually 76 before I came here. 75 people in the public, residents, who think that you guys should do something about it. So I don't believe in direct representation of council where you just have to do exactly what every single person contacts you says. It is by proxy. They voted you all in to do your best with the best amount of knowledge. But in 2 days, I handed you 75 residents that think that you should at least talk to them and figure out why it is that they think so. I guarantee that number will continue to go up the longer that you don't do anything, or especially at the end of this session, I email 75 people and say, I don't really think they want to. That somebody's gonna be interested and the number's gonna continue to go up. What we're asking for is, first of all, these things aren't miserable to live next to. Not all of them, but a good chunk of them. Having, and by the way, the county law states 8 is the absolute max number in the county. So that's the most people you can have. But if you have, as we have, 8 people in the backyard next door, lights are on, they're now on a timer from 1 a.m. to 5 a.m., which is awesome. All the lights on, blaring into your bedroom, casting shadows all over the place. Crowds of people talking because there's a vacation. Cackling, funny laughter. It's constant, and it's a new crew every week. We don't have in the city, the state does not authorize you to do anything from 7 to 30 days or 7 to 29 days. And definitely not for long-term rentals. But 6 days and less, you can straight up ban them if you wanted to. Ashwaubenon, they say it's gotta be owner occupied. I think it's De Pere says only in R1 and R2. You can go on and on and on and on of all the places nearby that have done something about this. You can extend that up to San Diego, which is becoming a ghost town, much like our east side is. They have a massive problem with it. Portugal's just straight up banned them out of the whole country. This is a global problem. This is a US problem. New Orleans, these larger cities have studies done on them that I've presented in the Planning Commission. Happy to share them with anybody else. This is unpleasant. We have between Airbnbs and vacation homes, somewhere between 400 and 500 of them, mostly centered on the east side. What the public, at least the 75 that I've seen so far, and I think that number's gonna keep going up, is please reach out to the public. Hold town halls, hold listening centers. Don't wait for them to show up and stand in front of council at the podium and say their spiel. Have a back and forth dialogue with the people that elected you. That's pretty much all that we're asking for at this stage. And I know this stuff at this point, after a year's worth, at the back of my hand, I can tell you darn near what every law says across the board for state, county, and city. Happy to be a resource. I even, law firm, have a spreadsheet with a whole bunch of different ones side by side of where we slightly may differ. I'm happy to share that with anybody else. So I go on and on. But the reality is, I think that families are pretty important to put back into some of these homes. We realize we can't stop people from buying homes. That is clear. But there are ways that we can feasibly assist to help compete with some of the outside big money. Because a lot of these are not owned by people from around here. And Tudor's people can't afford to compete with that.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Oh. I think I know most folks, but if you don't know me, I'm Joe Bain. I operate a number of short-term rentals here in town. I own and operate, I know there's some stats out there. There's one resident that owns 8 in town, that would be me. We actually don't own all those. We do provide property management services for folks, so we don't own all those properties. So, and then I believe the other person that owns 9 is also a local person, but lives in Manitowoc, that has made a significant investment here in our downtown recently as well. So, just like we do. A few things that I wanted to, I'll make some clarifications on some points through discussion. I didn't want to interrupt the discussion. I just share some stats. So I know there's some things out there about driving up home prices. I'm glad it was brought up earlier that, home prices are simply just up. Two Rivers still is well below the median home price here in Wisconsin. It is a cheaper place, especially when you look around. Short-term rentals, there's less than 1%. Simply just doesn't have an impact on home prices like folks think there. So I do want to talk about unlicensed site. I know there are, I've seen some stats on there. It was a big conversation today. So we do have an unlicensed Airbnb. Again, there's nothing, if it's greater than 30 days, Airbnb is simply a marketing platform. VRBO, those are marketing platforms, right? We license short-term rentals. I just shared stats like that with the county, or the city. So again, when you look at that, Joe, likely ours will be on there, but we are still not required to get a license from the county, a license from the city if it's more than 30 days. Again, those are, we have folks coming in for 2 to 3 months. It's primarily folks that have been in beer plant. So another property that we did a full renovation at the beginning of the year. A great success story was a local drug house on the east side. Completely gutted that out. Now it's a beautiful little ranch house over there. And folks are staying there, working at the beer plant, have a nice cozy place to stay. So again, cleaning up a place, another one of our success stories. I've seen a stat out there, $1.8 million generated across all Airbnbs in town. What an awesome number, $1.8 million injected into the community. That money goes to hiring contractors, hiring other folks that provide services. That doesn't capture all the money those folks go out and spend in our community. All our properties have a book in it that says, what do you like about the community? What did you like about the state? Every single one says, this restaurant was awesome. I love going to this store. If you want to read through some of those books with me, I'd be happy to bring those up. It's really cool how much additional places these people go with this disposable income. In addition to that, I assist with some of our Main Street, because we own property here on the Main Street as well, some commercial real estate as well. And so I help out the Main Street Board. One of the things we see through some of the geocaching is there's a lot of people that come to town just for the beach and leave. By again offering additional opportunities, we can keep those people here and they can spend money in our community and keep it going, right? So I thought that was neat. I've seen some things out there that it's somehow difficult to attract and retain businesses. Again, I mentioned ourselves. I mentioned another individual that owns the other 9 that made a significant investment. Again, we bring businesses into this community. Again, with our commercial, we have employees. This creates jobs. And we've been doing this since 2017 in this community, so we've been around for a while. I'm still waiting for that day I can cut myself my first paycheck because it's not that big of a money makers thing, especially when we continue to recycle that money into our properties. Both my wife and I, who own those properties and manage the other ones for folks, we still work full-time jobs. So there was proposed, so I did see some stats out there and there was some proposed alternatives to the short-term rental. I appreciate that. If you have an argument, provide a proposal. One was owner occupied or banned. Again, as Andrew alluded to, state law prohibits banning them outright. So I know we talked about some of these things. And then above 30 days or more, you can't ban those either because it falls into the category of long-term rental, tenancy, all those things. Again, we do have long-term rental properties as well we manage. So again, we know those laws pretty well. So short-term rental rules don't apply. You can't ban those. So again, there are some state rules like the 7 days limit. We're aware of that. Again, those are out there with that limit short-term rentals. I know Ash Schwab and I did it, but for different reasons, right? And I will say, you know, from what I hear from the police chief here and others, is there really an issue? Are we seeing anything? Personally, we're not. In our 8 years of doing it, we've had the police called on one of our properties once during that time, and it was actually a really nice couple, military couple in town, visiting family. We get a lot of folks like that, and it was a family member that lives here who had a drug problem, got kicked out of the house, and I'm breaking a bunch of stuff in our house that we're ultimately on the hook for paying for. So that was the one time the police got involved, and we've had thousands of guests that stayed at our properties over the years. So the other thing, occupancy as well. We had the discussion about occupancy, so that is regulated by the county. So when we go through our properties with the county, they say, okay, here's how many folks you have. That's also regulated by us. We don't want more people in there. So we're the police really on that. We don't want more people in our property that are allowed to stay there. We are required to keep registries that do have a number of guests. So we do provide that if asked for. So we do have those registries. So again, that is a county ordinance. There's no limit on it. I know there's a number 8 put out there, but it could be more, again, if you have that space. So I know there's some properties that are like 10 or 12. You don't see many more bigger than that as far as guests go. So, but again, I appreciate your time. You know, the question is, do we need to look at this ordinance? You know, we operate these here at Two Rivers, Manitowoc. We help assist opening up some in Illinois. We have some experience doing these. I will say Two Rivers already has a pretty robust ordinance the way it is. And, you know, we don't see, you know, the folks that are actually, you know, like you see here from the police chief here, the folks that are, you know, doing the right thing, we're doing them, you know, we're keeping monitoring them ourselves pretty well. So appreciate your time. I just want to share my experience. So thank you all again.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I want to reiterate, 75 people, 75 residents, and the city government kind of exists to represent the residents. They want a voice, that they want to talk about this more. So, like, consider them, please. We're talking about investments in the city. People that own their own homes, we hire cleaners, we hire snow removal people, we hire contractors. We also employ teachers at our schools. We have children that go to our schools here. And the downtown right now on the north end, I don't see all these businesses. I saw a jewelry store that closed this year. I saw a bank branch close this year. I saw Grizzlies close down last week for a couple of days because we don't have young people to work in these restaurants. This Woodfire pizza place is so exciting to open. I'm thinking to myself, who's gonna work there? What young people? Like, where are these 20 to 35-year-old people going to just magically come from? I'm concerned. So, like, we have a broad demographic of people. Historically, some parts of our town were designed for families. And I know for our family, we want to be in a neighborhood with neighbors, and to have makeshift motels shoehorned between us and another family with children, it's misery, it's misery. And so we are not against all Airbnbs. We want modification of some Airbnbs. And the idea of having some areas, R3s, R2s, great, go nuts, have Airbnbs. But areas that are zoned R1 for people that are looking to have families and neighbors that you get to know, like, that's not a big ask. I think we can do that in our community. We've got different zoning. So maybe that's something to consider. And definitely, please reach out to these 75 people. Listen to them. Listen to why they feel opposed to some of these things. Because their voices matter. Their voices matter. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay.
At this point in time, I can honestly say how council members interact with your constituents, and you're all members of this community, and I assume you get phone calls, you get emails. I'll leave that to you. I'm not saying 75 is insignificant. I'll editorialize a little, and perhaps if there was a plea out on Facebook saying the city wishes to limit your ability to sell your property for fair market value by excluding certain uses, that might get a certain use. That might get a certain response too, in all fairness. It all depends on how the question is couched, but that's your responsibility as far as your constituents. At this point, absent any direction from council to make significant changes in our ordinance on short-term rentals, other than some fine tuning, maybe some things in the zoning code that are needed, period, whether we had short-term rentals or not. You're not seeing a recommendation from city staff. If so directed, we certainly would proceed. But the issue's been brought to the council. It's been brought to the council on numerous occasions. And this is where we are. This is where we are. So we'll certainly work with the city attorney to identify things that need fine tuning or adjusting, or maybe that relate to the zoning code in any number of ways. Because we've got an old zoning code that's overdue for review. But I'm not hearing any consensus to make significant changes. We do have 2 closed session matters, both pertaining to property acquisition to discuss. If council is up to it, I can lead on one.
Can we speak to number 4?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, those will be my next thing.
Okay, good point. I'm sorry, please.
No, is there any further comment on number 4? Yes, Adam.
Okay, I did see the email that Mr. Robitaille had sent to us. And I mean, there are some good points in there, to a point. As far as engaging residents in proactivity, they can feel free to reach out at any time. For us council members, I think to engage 7,500 people, I don't think is the right thing to do. For us to go out there and necessarily email them or get a hold of them, because then there's always someone that's on the other side as well. Us emailing 75 people, I couldn't say that I didn't have the time to do so. I also work a full-time job. But their opinion does matter, and I hope that those people that have concerns do reach out. I've heard from you guys, of course, and I've heard from maybe 2 other people in the past via email. I've never spoken to anyone really in person on it, but there are some people that do have those concerns. When it says to ensure a fair share of just fees, utility rates, and properly tax, so that best education homes pay their fair share, I don't know that that's even legal. As far as charging utilities and upping their property tax rates, that's not a legal thing. If legal counsel can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't see how that is really legal to have them pay a different rate than anybody else in the city. However, I have brought it up before because of our utility rates and being high and having not necessarily short-term rentals, but a lot of people that are snowbirds and leave for the winter, that we do have a lot of homes that sit empty during winter, which can get frustrating as well. And I've always thought, I didn't get much support, but I always thought a standard of utilities and a minimum usage should always occur unless that minimum usage was met. In other words, if you don't, this is just by example, it's a random number. Say if you don't use 50 gallons of water, you automatically get charged 50 gallons of water. If you go through 50 gallons of water because you're here year-round, you just pay your normal rate. But there should be a minimum set standard of water that you should have to go through. And it shouldn't be an astronomical amount. It should be there to burden people. I think we should find out from billing what the low end users go through and base it off that. But then as far as limiting the number, I don't know what that number is. It does seem like we have a low number of short-term rentals. But I think the one way that if we were to limit them and the way we could go about that is to have a number of licenses available similar to how we regulate alcohol. And once those licenses are out, they're out. And this would also help people that are maybe going under the carpet, so to speak, and not registering their Airbnbs, not the ones that are above 30 days, but the other ones that aren't doing it, once they get caught and we don't have any more license, they're just out. Yeah, and that might scare some of those into actually getting a license so that they're not out. Again, I don't think 47 is that number. I do get the concern. We don't want 200 of these either. I don't even want 100 of them. Because it does have it can have a negative impact. Obviously, it has a very positive impact. People fixing up houses and disposable income coming to town, that's a real thing. Tourism is a real thing. I know that from running events. It's a real thing. We did our own economic study just for a softball tournament we had. I think it was back in 2017, that there was over $500,000 spent from those people in the 2.5 days they were here. That was not an economic study done by myself. That was by somebody else that does economic studies. And so it's real when these people come here from out of town and here to spend money. Now, that should be a reason for us to say that we should allow 200 of these because we can have a big economic impact, because it also affects residents. So there has to be a nice fair balance act. So if we were to limit them, I think that would be a way to go for limiting them. Figuring out what that number is would be have to be something that we'd have to discuss. But those are just my 2 cents, maybe 3 cents. For that matter, I think 3 different topics. 3 cents.
2 cents, 4 cents, something like that.
And
I'm done talking.
I got a question.
Suck the air out of the room now.
I like the idea about having different levels of permit. And what I'm wondering is that, because right now we're talking, was it 1.1%? I like the idea of saying, hey, look, we're capping it.
Mm-hmm.
But would it be a cap per permit? Like level? Or would it be overall all the permits together and have like a cap of 5%?
I think it'd be an overall cap,
Okay.
similar to like the alcohol. It don't matter if it's beer, I think beer and alcohol go together. No, they're separate. They are separate. But I think it should be overall because it has the same impact on the community. I don't know what that percentage is or what that number is, but I think it'd be a very easy way to do it and get those people that are riding under the carpet, those 1 or 2 or 3 that maybe don't have a license and maybe you're doing things the right way, that if they get caught, there wouldn't be any licensing in here for them. So they would just be kind of out of the game.
Yeah,
I think at some point too, the market will seek its own level. There's not an infinite number of guests to rent, say 200.
Plus, there's not very many homes available.
Right. Plus, we've got great hotels, and we got, a new incoming. At some point, you're gonna run out of renters, and less popular Airbnbs will drop off most likely, and
Return to
you see a steady number of the nicer ones.
yes, Greg.
Just one point I'd make, there may be some merits in establishing some number, which, is a concept right now, that maybe doesn't need to include the business zoned districts where you could, like we have a number of second floor short-term rentals now. Maybe it's a limit that applies strictly to the residentially zoned neighborhoods.
That would make sense.
Yeah, the other piece we're kind of missing locally, and I think, I'll say it, I think most of us want to see our tourism economy continue to grow, especially if it's tourism that contributes to community quality of life and economic well-being. Face it, more disposable income into the community allows those of us who live here year-round to enjoy a greater variety of goods and services than we would otherwise. But the piece I always point out is kind of missing now, and probably some properties here on the river, if and when they develop, will address that, is we don't have the multi-unit condo complexes, for example, where if you go on Airbnb for a Sturgeon Bay or a Traverse City communities, and in those settings, people are used to maybe a little more transient clientele. Right now, most of our short-term rentals are in 1 and 2 family neighborhoods. I wouldn't diss the R2 and R3, by the way, because those are generally an expectation that it's 1 or 2 families. But if you're talking about a cap, maybe it's limited to in the R1, R2, and R3, 1 and 2 family neighborhoods, leaving some room where multifamily zoning applies, leaving some room in the commercial districts where arguably there's not the neighborhood impact. These arguments aren't without merit. I think it just comes at what point is it really a problem for the community? And I don't think collectively we're there yet. But just a couple of suggestions with regard to a cap like that.
Yeah, Tim.
And as for utility rates, that's why we decided to go with raising the meter fees so that people that weren't here all the time, they paid their fair share instead of adjusting the rate for the people who actually live here and spend time in their homes. That's why some of that went towards the meter fee instead.
Anything else? So far, the consensus, so far what I've got is fine tuning the short-term rentals. And then if we could look into maybe capping off the number of rentals, what that number would be, I don't know that either, but, potentially, I don't know if that would, I agree, I think that would be a good idea, you could then limit how many you have, but what that number is, like everyone else is saying. Can't just pick one out of the air, you have to come up with something somewhere, so.
And I think Anna pointed this out too. There's 39 names here, or whatever number, 75. I think if they, get your calls, I've never heard mention hours with you.
That's why we do a petition.
That's
They
fine.
are contacting you. This is what's happening.
Good, okay,
They-
good,
they
because
feel-
I'd like to.
they
I
feel
think some
like
of the
they-
facts should be discussed. and
They
delivered.
feel like they have reached out to you. I will share with you what I hear.
I will say, no one's ever called me.
They feel like they're unheard. They don't trust that they're gonna be heard. They feel completely beat down. They've given up. So we wrote this petition and we wrote down these things and we said, if you agree and you wanna add, like, we're gonna present this, this is your voice reaching out. This is, like, you know, I had one woman, she was afraid to even sign it because she was afraid it was gonna mean retaliation for her from the police, whatever. I invited her, I don't know, I'm sharing with you, if I had a nickel for every person that said to me, they're not gonna listen to me, they don't care what I say, they're just gonna do what they wanna do. Yes, I mean, like, some negative things. I could afford to stay in a fancy Airbnb with this. I'm making a joke. But seriously, a lot of people stress this. So we decided to write this petition with these things, and we put it out to people in 30 hours. We said, if you have your opinion on Airbnbs, we're gonna present this to the council, include your name. So consider these names contacting you. This is contacting you.
That would be great, okay?
Yeah.
So I want to do
They did, this is that.
When I said my comment, I was referring to when somebody was up there speaking and said that we should contact them. That's what I was going back after is, we're not gonna contact all 75 of them, nor do I think that would be right.
I don't think
That
they
was,
looked at it.
that was like a town hall idea,
Oh,
have a listening session. And we can say, here will be some back and forth, not standing at the podium and like it just popped down here, but like, okay, let's get people in a room and just talk for a little bit.
Make it less intimidating.
Yes.
So that's,
I get it.
Okay, anything else? We good? Are we good on this topic?
Didn't we send a questionnaire out to residents at one time, asking for their input as far as where they wanted to see the city go?
Probably our most recent, I mean, there were surveys with the Park and Rec, Park and Open Space Plan. The most recent citywide one about general city direction was in early 2021 for the comp plan update.
Okay.
Where I'm going from memory, maybe 240 responses on that. I
Right.
don't, there were a lot of individual comments. At that point in time, we did not call out any questions specific to STR, short-term rentals. That might be included in a more comprehensive survey if the council wants to do it in the future.
Well, I'm just saying, if we were to run a survey of some sort regularly, you know, and just to see what's on people's minds, but I think that would be invaluable, but you know, I mean, as far as getting in touch with residents, and I'm really sorry to hear that people are afraid to speak out. I don't know why that would be, because we are very responsive. We want input from our residents, because that's what kind of drives our decision making. But I mean, you know, we have social media, we have platforms. People are more than welcome to come to city council meetings. They're more than welcome to write us emails. There's so many different avenues as to how they can become personally involved with their local government. And I don't know, I mean, we do a lot to keep people in the loop. But you also have to remember that people have to take the initiative too. It's not just all on us.
I know in the past, we've talked about doing town halls, listening sessions, and I think it was Bonnie, did you run one or two months before and no one showed up? Just I think that was right when I got on council, right there about where I remember we had talked about some listening sessions, and it's not the downplay, which you had said, but I just remember the feedback when I got on council. Years it is, 4 years ago or so. I do remember us talking about town halls, and it was brought up, maybe personal finance, I can't remember. But anyway, I just do remember Bonnie coming back and saying that she did, and no one showed up.
And that's what's gonna go on my retirement thing, isn't it?
Whereas.
You're the highest vote getter last time. No one showed up for your town hall. But I mean, I have no problem with the town hall. I mean, I like listening to people, even with people. I mean, I respond to you guys.
Yeah.
And doesn't mean we always agree, but that's okay. That's how the process works.
If you guys post one, we will do our best to help drum on as well. Whatever Mr. Mathis has been doing with getting feedback on parks, I mean.
He's a genius.
He's got something, you know?
He's pretty smart.
So, I mean, that is a model, I think, for how we might be able to get a little bit more connection between some people that are.
So nobody showed up to my open house either.
Yeah.
Well,
I could have it open house. I was like the one person. I can be cookies.
Okay, anything else? We still have closed session yet. Yeah. So, seeing nothing else,
Is there something there?
Greg, anything else?
Nope, other than closed session.
Okay, so, the city council reserves the right to enter into closed session per Wisconsin statutes 19.851E, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investment of public funds, or conducting other specified public business. Whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. Tonight, discuss property acquisition matters, discuss possible assistance to a development project. Looking for a motion to go into closed executive
I'll
session.
make a motion to go into closed session.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Tim.
Hi.
Adam Husky.
What? Oh, yes, I do.
Darrell Blair.
Hi.
Mark Bittner. Shannon Derby. Hi. Bill LeClaire.
Hi.
Doug Brandt. Tim
Okay,
Petrie.
Tim, aye.
Bonnie Schumalonis. Scott Steckmesser.
Aye.
All in favor.
Thank you. Cool. I can't close the door yet. Yeah, get that media guy on you first.